All right, final lesson for my college class before their tests is on topic 7, designing an experiment. So, what we want to do is look at the difference between observational studies and experimentation. What is the different methods for experiments? How do you divide groups based on information? What are the special groups that you can use in designing an experiment? How to randomize your group? What's the importance of replication? And what is the confounding variable? So, we deal in experimentations and statistics, but we should define it and talk about differences from observational studies. An experiment is something that is created so that you have control over the variables and what you see in the study. An observational study is something where you have very little control and you're just observing what will happen from a distance. Think anthropology. And if you know of anthropology, you basically know that what they do is they just kind of research something by just watching it the whole entire time. That is the perfect example of an observational study because all they're doing is just watching it the entire time. I remember taking an anthropology class and learning about some anthropologist, I guess, um, who basically just kind of watched gangs all day, which probably had to be pretty wild. Um, Basically watching all that crime and not not doing anything about it. That had to be an interesting situation. Um, so that's what observational is. Basically, just watching and just taking notes. The difference between the two is the level of control that you have on the study. Experiment is a lot of control. Observation study is no control. And that's the big difference. If you're controlling every aspect of it, that is an experiment. If you're not controlling a lot of it, it's an observational study. Examples: one is an observational study, one is an experiment. Researchers want to determine the effect of music, if any, on test scores. So during the SAT, the school plays music over the announcements and views the results to see if the average test score is higher than it was last year. That is an observational study. Because you have no control, you're just watching what happens. Researchers want to determine the effects of music, if any, on test scores. So during the SAT, the school breaks the student base up into different groups according to age and gender and testing ability. And playing music is in some classrooms while not playing in other classrooms. That is an experiment because there's a lot of control. You're actually creating different groups and other stuff like that. So that is an experiment versus an observational study. Now, creating groups in experiment. There are 3 ways to create groups in the experiment. This is really used every single time. It's called completely randomized allocation. It's when you go ahead and just put people in any group randomized. You pretty much use it all the time. Then you have these other two. This is randomized block design. Really, that's just if you want to start off with some kind of different strata. Like if you wanted to start off with by race or by age or by gender. That's when you employ that. You would still end up using this one after you broke everyone up based off race and gender and that stuff. It would literally be the thing after that. And we'll look at a couple examples of that. And you have matched pairs design, which is specifically number 2, but with literally just two paired strata. So like a good example of a matched pair design would be male versus female, because it's literally just 2 male versus female. Alright, so you have an example here. A researcher is attempting to create a new therapeutical method to help with the symptoms of the flu virus. To do this, he takes 2,000 current flu sufferers and decides to create several groups testing the flu therapy against the normal progression of the flu, the current flu vaccine, and wants to test the psychological effects of the flu. How should they set up the experiment? So there's really 4 groups that it mentions in here. We're going to start with 3, and then I'm going to talk about the special group number 4 after I go through this one. But the first one is just their flu therapy. This is their brand new therapy. I'm going to spell therapy wrong, and that's just terrible. Therapy. Flu therapy, their brand new therapy. Then they said they want to compare it to the old flu vaccine, the current flu vaccine. Now, we're not certain if this is the shot or anything. We just say it's a flu therapy. Okay, and then it says it wants to go through the normal progression and the psychological effects of the drug. I'm going to mention those in 1 second, right after I bring in these two new groups. So right now, we're looking at those two right there. Okay, so control group, a group that measures these are the special groups to consider. Control group is a group that measures what happens due to the natural progression of time. I took if you remember this, the thing that was going around on Facebook a little while ago about the kids learning about dirty hands, where she put up 3 pieces of bread. One they touched with their dirty hands, one they touched with their clean hands, and then there was one for control to show the natural progression of the bread as it deteriorated naturally over time. That's a control. You're definitely showing a natural progression of something without being affected by your experimentation. Those are important because you want to see if your treatment is really doing better or worse based on natural progression. If it's doing worse than natural progression, then why use it? Placebo group. Placebo group is a fake treatment used to see if the medicine is working. It doesn't necessarily have to be medicine, but just anything that would be like a fake thing that would make you think you're actually doing the actual treatment. A placebo group is a group of subjects who all get a fake medicine or some kind of fake treatment. Clearly, I'm basing this a lot off of medical stuff, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be any fake treatment. Okay, so how does that add to my example? I'm actually going to replace my old slide with this one. So, what it does is this. So it says you want to test against the psychological effects of the drug. The psychological effects of the drug is automatically a placebo. So you're going to throw a placebo in there right away. And then against the normal progression of the flu, that is your control. So you have a control and a placebo group. And this is, we'll just put in parentheses, normal progression. Okay. So that's now my 4 groups based off of this. And now all we gotta do is we kind of have to randomize our 2,000 current flu sufferers. So how is this going to happen? Well, randomization. Everything in the experiment should be as random as possible. We should use methods like random number generators, rolling dice, spinners, and other things that contribute to picking things at random. This should be used to get participants into each group except strata and block designs. Strata is that thing like when you break them up on gender or when you break them up on race. You certainly can't look at a person who's already African American and say you're going to be Caucasian. Those groups are automatically set. That's why you can't randomize into those groups. It's the groups after you're randomized into the strata groups that you will randomize. So just keep that in mind. So how does it work for this situation? Again, we're going to bring back my old slide. So I got 2,000. So what I might do in this situation is this. I might say I'm going to number every person in that 0 to 2,000. So I'm going to give everyone, well, it will be 1 to 2,000. So I'm going to give every flu sufferer a number from 1 to 2,000. This will be done at random. So I just go around like 1, 2, 3. Now, what I'm going to say is 0, no, not 0, 1 to 500 is going to go into the control. Now, they wouldn't know it's the control. They might see like group A, group B, group C, group D. But 1 to 500 would go into control. And then I'd say 501 to 1000 would go into flu therapy. Then we'd have 1001 to 1500 would go into the vaccine that we've already created at some point. And then 1501 to 2000 would go into our placebo group. Now, like I said before, your people will probably not know, or at least they shouldn't know which group they're going into. They would probably just see this as Group A, Group B, Group C, and Group D. If your participants are the only ones who do not actually know what they're going into, we call this single blind. Single blind is when the participants are the only ones who do not know what the treatment they are getting is. So that is a single blind. Only the participants, only the subjects are the ones who do not know what treatment they are getting. And then we have what's called a double blind, which is always better. Don't let anybody ever fool you. Double blind is always better. Now, there are certain situations where you don't have to worry about making a double blind, but usually double blind placebos, trial tests are the ones that work the best. So double blind is that the participants and examiners do not know who gets what treatment. So you might be asking, well, who would know? Because someone has to know. Because how are they going to take accurate data? And that's a very good question, random person on the internet who I have never met before. And the answer to that question is this. There's usually a third group that is administering everything. So that third group knows exactly what each group is, or what each group in this this thing. So like Group A is getting the control, they're getting nothing. Group B would be getting the flu therapy. They would know all that. So they would basically be kind of like these people who never interact with the participants. And there'd be a group of doctors who did interact with this participant. And they'd be like, here is the pill I want you to give that person. Go give that person this. No, we are not telling you what it is. We just want you to know that this is what you're going to give you. So there's always that third group kind of gathering the data and pulling it all together. And that's what a double blind is. And double blind is always better. Double blind always gets rid of the bias that we're talking about, because you would be surprised how much your own body language will give off if you're not trying to. Just simply trying to act like you trying to just simply knowing but attempting to act like you don't know what you're giving out will be telling to people. Same reason why dogs know when when their owners are upset, even though they're trying not to show that they're upset. It's just a trigger that we have. So why is it important to do all these confounding variables? A confounding variable is something that is outside the experiment that can alter the result. So if you do proper experimental design, it kind of eliminates these confounding variables. If you go back to the observational study, did the students increase their score because the music increased them, or were the skill levels just better than the last year's group? If you have to ask that question, that makes it a confounding variable. So that's something to keep in mind. You want to get rid of all of those possible confounding variables. I read about the situation in a book once. It's really good to kind of emphasize what confounding variables are. There was a professor who was attempting to determine what teaching style was better. So in one semester he taught it one way, and in the fall semester he taught it one way, and in the spring semester he taught it a second way. And in the spring semester he had far more people who were who did better, so he concluded that the second method was better. However, is it really the method of teaching that's better, or is it that people generally do better in spring semester, which is actually a true thing, because people are more serious in spring semester, because you get the people who are just taking college because someone told them they should take college but really shouldn't be in college out by the fall semester. In the spring semester you have people who are way more dedicated to actually getting through everything. Okay, so that's confounding variables. So your experimental design should eliminate those confounding variables. Okay, example number 2. Working with new treatment for baldness, the scientist is starting human trials, realizing that there are significant differences between males and females. The scientists decide to break them into male and female groups, first getting 3,000 males and 3,000 females. He wants to test his formula against the leading baldness cure, Rogaine, as well as its effectiveness in relation to normal hair loss. How would you design the experiment explaining that you would do what you would do to randomize the subjects in the group? Okay, so this is an example of kind of a matched pairs design, because you're going to start off with male and female first. And you're not going to randomize that. It's just automatically 3,000 male and 3,000 female. They're not randomized. You're not going to come in and look at a female and say you need to go to the male group. They already know where they're going. This is not unknown to them. But then from here, we're going to, let's see, have his treatment, whatever that may be, probably a cream. Then you're going to go against Rogaine, which I really wanted to use a hair club for men joke here and want to say not only am I the president, but I'm a client. But, we can't always do things like that. And then we're going to have a control against normal hair loss. And then we're going to replicate that. And I probably should have done the bottom group first, just so that it lined up a little bit better. But that's okay. One day I'll redo this. And this will just give me the motivation to do it. Okay. So then I want to randomize my people into each group. It's going to be 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. I do not really need to write it twice. Whatever I do for the males is good enough for the females, and vice versa. So, to get them all in the group, I could say that I'm going to, and we'll deviate from the random number generator because using it every single time, kind of boring. So, we can say that I'm going to get 3,000 colored cards. We'll use the primary colors. So we're going to say we're going to get 1,000 red, 1,000 blue, 1,000 yellow. Participants pick out of a hat and Red goes to treatment. Blue goes to Rogaine. And yellow goes to control. And you want to keep this thing as simple as possible because you want it to be replicable, which is one of the points that I had in the very beginning. You want to be replicable because you want someone to be able to redo your experiment and get your same results. If they can't get your same results, well, they're going to say, well, did he cheat? Did they cheat? Did she cheat? So you want someone to be able to go back, look at your experiment, and get your same results. So that's your basic experimental design for that one. Okay, a group of researchers are attempting to determine if we eat food based on sight cues. To do this, the researchers create a set of bowls that fill from bottom and plan to get regular bowls and fill them with soup as the bowl gets 1/5 full. The idea is that if a person doesn't realize their bowl is being filled, they will unconsciously eat more. This is actually a real experiment, and yes, you do actually eat more when you don't realize you're emptying your bowl. So, how would you create an experiment based off this situation with a random 400 people? There's really only two groups here. There is the regular bowl, and there's the fillable bowl. Okay, and so I'm going to have 200 people in each. There is no precursor, there's no male and female group. And then I can just say I'm going to flip a coin. Heads goes to regular bowl. Tails goes to fillable. Okay. Good. Last one. A veterinarian is doing a study on canine hip dysplasia. They want to test if the leading therapy is good therapy for dogs, in contrast to just letting dogs heal normally. How would you do this using just a random 1,000 dogs? And as a follow-up question, what might be a strata that would be helpful for the veterinarians to break the dogs into, perhaps changing the sample size that would lead them to have a better ideal. Ugh, my English is terrible. Idea of hip dysplasia. Again, there's really only two things here. We've got the leading therapy, and we got the control. Okay, so then let's see. We got 1,000 dogs, so it's going to be 500 and 500. And then for random, I could flip a coin again. That just seems kind of redundant. Let's go with, I have 500 red tennis balls and 500 yellow tennis balls. Now stick with me here, guys. I throw the tennis balls. Whichever the dog picks up first is their group. So we go red, not read, red, Leading therapy. Yellow. Control. Bam. There you go. What might be a strata that would be helpful for the veterinarians to break the dogs into? Breed. Because different breeds are going to have different probabilities of hip dysplasia.